How many times in the last couple of weeks have you stared at a blank screen with no idea on what you want to create? What if I told you there's a system that can help you to make sure you never experience that again? And it takes less than an hour to set up. Stay with me. Let's get into this. 8 months ago, I had a newsletter to write. I had no inspiration, no ideas on exactly what I wanted to share that week with my audience. And then I remembered that I had a story bank about 5 months before that time. I had gone through this exercise of creating a story bank for myself. So at that point, I opened up the story bank. I started reading through a couple of stories that I had written down, and right there and then, I got an idea for the newsletter for that week. And 5 minutes from that point, I was able to build a newsletter outline. I went from no ideas, blank, no inspiration, to having a newsletter outline in 5 minutes. I want to share with you today on why you need a story bank, why everyone who creates content in text, in video, in audio needs a story bank, and how you can build yours. Because let's be honest with each other, inspiration is unreliable. You won't always be inspired, but you can always be prepared. Which kind of brings me to the first point that I wanted to highlight in all of this is the fact that you won't always be inspired. Inspiration is never a constant. There's days where you're highly inspired, and there's days where you're really not inspired. Life happens and things happen, and it's wise to prepare for the days that you will be less inspired and to take advantage of the days that you'll be more inspired. I always tell people, anytime you really feel really inspired, use those moments to your advantage and create as much as you can in that window of time. But on the days where you're not really inspired, you fall back to the systems that you've set in place. And a story bank is one of those systems that you can use on days like that. You know, I heard someone say this, that waiting for inspiration to come is like you waiting to feel motivated before you go to the gym. It will never happen. However, you can take steps to create systems that can trigger that inspiration, that can give you that boost when you need it the most. You know, the author of War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, says, amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals have systems. That's a incredible way to look at it. Amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals have systems. All right, now for the thing that you're waiting on, the thing you want to hear about. What is a story bank? A story bank is a table, a database, a form, whatever it is. The format doesn't really matter. But what it does is it helps you record your most interesting and your most personable stories and your most impactful stories, such that you can use and reuse in whatever it is that you're creating. And emphasis on reuse, because a good story is one that you will tell multiple times and it'll have different impacts on different audiences in different forms and different mediums that you use it, right? But a story bank essentially helps you to store those stories so that in moments and in times where you're lacking for inspiration, or you just need a good story to tell, you can always go through and pick something out. Recently, I came across the story of a business consultant. I think his name is David Zimbecki, and he was saying how his struggle as a consultant was that every time he would talk to an audience, and not necessarily a business audience, but most of the time when he would talk to an audience, he sounded too stiff. He sounded too businessy, is the way he put it, right? But he was saying that one of the ways he was able to to become more relatable to people was to tell better stories. The only challenge was, how does he know what stories to tell? And that's where he found a story bank to be really helpful. So what he did was he created a story bank of different stories, personal stories that he had from different life experiences and different activities all through his life that could relate to his audience and could relate to things that his audience had gone through or things they were currently going through, or could just be a source of connection, a bridge to connect with the audience. And he sort of wrote those down, and he found ways to sort of put that in his communication, whether written or verbal, right? And one thing he said is that he was able to connect with people a whole lot better. Stories help us connect with people, and creating a story bank will help you understand which stories to use at different times. I want you to think of your story bank like your spice cabinet. You have some curry in there, some thyme, you have some rosemary, some oregano, you have a bunch of spices in there. Your story bank is like a spice cabinet in the sense that you're not growing thyme every throughout the year, but you have some in there, and when you need it, you get it and you use it, and you could put it back. That's how a story bank is. You're constantly going through life, and of course you get new stories as you go through life. You add them in the bank, and when you need them, you get them and you put them back as soon as you're done. A story bank allows you to use and reuse your stories to connect to the people that matter. And I want to ask you a quick question as we're going through this story bank idea. What I want you to start thinking, what format do you think would work for you? For some people, it could be a Notion table or database. For some people, it could be Google Docs. For somebody else, it might be a note. It might be in the Notes app on their phone. What format would work for you? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's get to the next then. Why stories matter. Stories help us connect with people. Stories make us more relatable. Stories help us serve the people that we're speaking to, talking to, writing to. Stories help us connect. I'm going to use myself an example. For instance, I could have come on this video and told you about how, as creators, as builders, it's difficult to overcome creative block and writer's blocks. And this is why you need a story bank. But instead, I came and I told you about a time when 8 months ago, I had to write a newsletter. I was tired, I was not inspired, and I found an idea from my story bank automatically. And that story helps you connect a little bit more with what I'm trying to say. It helps you connect a little bit more and helps you understand the emotional side of things in what I'm trying to tell you. Stories help us connect with people, stories make us relatable. If you find that currently the kind of content you're creating or the messages that you're passing across people are not engaging with them, you might want to look at your storytelling. You might want to look at if you even have stories in there or the kind of stories that you're putting in there. If you really want to engage with people, you really want to connect to people, tell good stories and ensure that the stories you tell are stories that your audience can relate to. I heard someone say this: facts tell, but stories sell. If you really want to convey a message, if you really want people to get the heart behind the content, the heart behind the text, the heart behind the video, tell stories. Facts tell, stories sell. All right, so here's the practical section. I want to walk you through building your own story bank, right? I want you to take whatever platform you're going to do this on. It could be your Notes app, it could be your Google Docs, it could be Notion. I want you to open up a fresh page in that. That's step one. Step two, I want you to create a table. And in that table, I want you to have five columns in the table, and of course, as many rows as possible, right? So let's start off with 30 rows. 5 columns, 30 rows. In the first column, this is step three now. In the first column, I want you to put life prompts. Life prompts. I'll explain what those are. In the second column, I want you to write the word first. In the column after that, I want you to write the word last. In the next one, I want you to write the word worst. And in the final column, I want you to write the word best. So the 5 columns you're going to have is going to be life prompts, first, last, worst, best. Again, that's life prompts, first, last, worst, best. And what I want you to do is essentially for every life prompt that you generate that sort of relates to your audience or relates to the kind of content you create, you're going to enter in a story about the first, last, worst, best. For instance, if the life prompt you have is a job, what was your first job like? Who did you work for? What did you do? What was your last job like? You get it? What was the worst job you've ever had like? And what was the best job you've ever had like? You get what I'm saying? And in the columns, in the cells for each of those stories, just write 2 to 3 sentences. You don't need to write the entire story at once. You just need a trigger point to remember exactly what happened for each of those memories, for each of those stories. That's how you build your story bank, essentially. And one thing I want you to do as well is as you go through life, you get new stories because you're living. And that's fantastic. Update this at least every 2 weeks. Some people like to do this every week. I would say at the least every 2 weeks, update this, put in new stories, new experiences, and make sure that your story bank is always being deposited into, because it's like an actual bank account, right? And once you have your story bank built, you can now use it to find and trigger inspiration for whatever it is that you're looking to create. And sometimes it might not be that you're looking for inspiration. You might just be looking for a good story that fits what you're trying to create. Your story bank will help you. And one of the additional ways that you can sort of improve your story bank is to put tags. What do I mean by that? Most of our stories have themes. For instance, there might be some of your stories that are related to money, and some of your other stories might be related to relationships. You can put tags on them just to sort of help categorize them, so that when next you need a story that's related to money, you could easily find that. Or you need a story that's related to relationships, you can easily find that. But I want to make it this a whole lot easier for you. I have decided to share my personal story bank template. It's a Notion template. I'm sharing it with you. It's free. You don't have to start from scratch. I put in a bunch of live prompts there. It's already built for you. You just have to copy it into your Notion space. It's free of charge. The link is in the description. Go get it. Our key takeaways from this video. Number one, inspiration is unreliable. It's much better that you have systems in place. Key takeaways. Number one, inspiration is unreliable. It's much more important that you build systems. Number two, a story bank is your personal library of your most impactful stories that you can use and reuse. Number three, stories help you connect with people. Stories make you more relatable. I want you to remember this. Facts tell, stories sell. And number four is, I want you to also know that it's worth investing 30 minutes a week to build and update your story bank than to stare at a blank screen for hours on end. So here are my final thoughts. You're going to have days where you really don't feel inspired. And it's part of the human experience. It just happens. What makes the difference on those days is the systems that you have in place. And a story bank is a fantastic way to find inspiration, to trigger inspiration on the days where you really don't feel like it, right? So it's worth the time, it's worth the investment, it's worth the effort to create something that you can always rely on much later down the line, right? If this has helped you, if this has been valuable for you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know. Do you currently have a story bank? Are you currently using a story bank? Are you willing to try it? I'd say you should try it. Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, there's a link in the description for a free story bank template on Notion. All right, till next time, God bless.